I believe in doing the best job possible. If you're going to do good in the world, you have to be responsible. You have to be strong. You have to have values and stick to those values. Marketing isn't about manipulating people. There's an ethical and positive way to do it. A lot of people are worried that AI is going to put everybody out of work. There are always going to be jobs. It's just that jobs are going to change. In 5 or 10 years, there will be jobs that exist that don't exist today. The day I stop making mistakes, is the day I should just stop. You're going to grow your business faster through delegating and trusting other people.
Hello and welcome to the Success Differently podcast. My name is Michelle Sorgaroli. I am your host today, and we're being joined by Mhairi Petrovic. Now, Mhairi is one of Vancouver's early adopters of digital strategy. She founded Outsmarts Marketing in 2002, long before most of us knew what digital strategy even was. She's originally from Scotland, but now based in Canada. And she takes a down-to-earth approach to leading her team. And they specialize in SEO, website development, content strategy, and online advertising. And I think there's some exploration in AI now as well. We'll get into that a little bit later, right, Mhairi? A little bit about Mhairi. She has been, while being a CEO of her company, she has been a course instructor, a volunteer mentor, a philanthropic activator, an association board member, and an awards judge, all while bringing passion, commitment, and creativity to business owners who want purpose-driven ways to grow their business and thrive. When she's not working, you might find Mhairi biking in the rain, swimming, doing yoga, fermenting something unusual, and visiting ancient megaliths. And I am absolutely delighted to welcome Mhairi to this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm so excited to be here. I know that we have fabulous conversations, so I'm interested to see where this is going to take us today. That was an amazing introduction.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm delighted to introduce you. I'm delighted to welcome you into our podcast community. And I'm also very excited about where this is going to go. So let's start with, you started out Smarts Marketing in 2002. And I want to just lean into, as I understand your values to be that may have developed since then, but they are, correct me if I'm wrong, I understand the values of Outsmarts to be respect, quality, trust, and responsibility. Is that accurate?
It's very accurate.
Beautiful.
I believe that business should be built on respect, mutual respect of
Mm,
the people that you work with, that being your team, but obviously and
mm,
most importantly, the clients. But that goes two ways too. If the client isn't being respectable, and we've had situations like this over the years where I've had to take clients aside and say, hey, wait a minute, what are you thinking about here? So
mm,
respect is really important. Tenacity is really important.
mm.
I'm Scottish, so obviously, well, maybe this isn't obvious to everybody, but Scottish people tend to be tenacious. They tend to be forthright. They also tend to be people that have pretty high standards. So I believe in, not just doing a good job, but doing the best job possible for the people that you work
Yeah,
with.
beautiful.
These are important things. These are, things that we have in the code of ethics within Outsmarts, but these are something that I really take to heart as well. As I'm choosing the clients that we work with, we're very fortunate these days that, we don't have to work with everybody that comes along. We've been doing this for a long time, so we're really selective. And these are the values that I take into account, even when we're meeting with potential clients for the first time, potential partners. So,
Right.
yeah, it's a thread that goes through everything that Outsmarts does, but also things that I do as well.
That's gorgeous. And you're obviously very embedded in those, which is evident as you're talking about it. Vari, I'm actually curious, in 2002, were these values clear to you at that time when you founded Outsmarts?
A lot of them were like, these are the values that I've built my life on. But
Mm,
I also feel like maybe they weren't as obvious. I think as you grow older, you grow into a more, you become more confident. You begin to see things clearer as well. So these were all underlying things that were important. But over time, they've really become cemented and solidified.
that's gorgeous. So coming into Outsmarts with these values that were more or less clear, um, as you think about your backstory I am curious, what do you think might have informed some or all of these values that you brought with you into the business world?
It was my family upbringing. Um,
Ah,
we that was the way I was brought up, quite honestly. It's also the family that I have grown since I've been here. These are the values that are important to us as well.
mm,
And yeah, I think going back, my grandmother was a huge influence. I have two grannies that were both huge influences, but I had one that lived down the street, and she was actually born in 1898. And I spent a lot of time with her growing up, and she really instilled a lot of these values. She was the kindest person, and she had gone through a lot of tragedy and difficulty in her life. And yet she was still happy and content and respectful. And, so
mm,
many of the things I think I learned from growing up as a wee girl in Scotland with, the people that I grew up with.
mhm. How do you think the way she was influenced you in your younger years?
In so many ways. A woman who, she came from a time where women didn't work. So she
Mm,
didn't have the opportunity to work. Her husband died when she was really young, well, she was in her 50s. Um,
mm,
she lived into her 90s. She lived the majority of her life without him,
mm,
with, little benefits, little help from anybody. And yet she was still a proud woman who you would
mm,
never have known that she, reflecting back, I wouldn't even have thought there was any struggle at all. But, knowing now what I know, there must have been. And there was no
mm,
um, evidence of that. She always approached things in a positive way. And yeah, it's fascinating to think back and see, the influence that she had and just the way that she almost brought me up. Well, among my my parents and whatnot, she was the sort of fallback. So the time that I spent is very, very fond, and she was my best friend for a long time. So that's really sweet.
I
Well, I'm
can
lucky. I'm lucky to have had that. Um, so yeah.
I love that. I can see that in your eyes. There's a lot of memories that are rising for you right now. Is there a particular story that comes to mind that may have influenced how you run your team or how you lead your team at Outsmarts today?
No, there's not a particular one thing that's coming up. I mean, there are experience that I have had before I founded my company. And I think, those impact more than things from when I was growing up. Prior to founding Outsmarts in 2002, I worked in sales
Mm,
and I worked in a very, you know, high intensity sales role where, latterly I covered the whole of the West Coast, so all the way from California all the way up to Alaska. I was traveling a lot and
mm,
it was quite a high pressured role. And I saw a lot of things that made me realize that, that's not how I want my business to be. So one
mm,
example would be, when you're in a sales role and you're working for a large organization, I was selling really intricate software solutions. Um, at the end of every month and the end of every quarter, your boss would come to you and say, you need to do this reach your quota. And I don't
mm,
care what you do. And it almost felt like you were prostituting yourself in some ways,
mm,
anything to, and sometimes it was, I wouldn't say deceitful, but it just, the things that you had to do just didn't feel like it was the right thing
mm,
for me, for the client. And I really didn't like that. So that would be one example. Another example was, and this is really important to me in how I run my business, life is more important than work, in my opinion.
uh,
And if you enjoy your job, then awesome. But when my daughter was little, it was coming up on her first birthday, and I worked for this company that will remain nameless. And my boss wanted me to be in Toronto for her first birthday, and I said, "Well, I can't. I'm not going to miss it. I can't bring her. I'm not going to miss her first birthday." And he said, "Well, yes, you are." And I said, no, I'm not. I quit. So, and that lesson led me to realize, especially with my team, that your life, your health is more important than your work. Yes, your work is important, of course. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I always say that to my team if they're struggling with things or if they're feeling unwell, take the time that you need.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
those are two kind of negative things in a way that really opened my eyes and made me realize that I want to do things on my terms and that, life is life and health are way more important than making loads and loads of money and being in business, being having to be away for important pivotal things in your children or your family's lives. You're never going to get that back.
Never going to get that back. Well said. I think, to your point, it is often a negative experience that gives us the clarity.
Mhm.
It's often not a positive experience. It can be, but it's often not a positive experience that gives us the clarity that of the things that are important to us and the things that we want. Very often it's a negative one because it's such a high contrast, I think. Um, so as you think about those negative experiences and having translated them now into your own company with Outsmarts,
Mhm.
what do you do differently within your company to make sure that you honor what you want and avoid what you don't want, let's say?
Sure. First of all, my team has complete flexibility. I don't care when the work gets done, as long as it gets done to the highest of standards. So
Mm,
we have flexibility around that. We tend to like every project that we take on is different. And there's a reason for that. I don't believe that we should take a cookie cutter approach to working with clients
mm,
where every project is the same and you will do things my way. That's not the right way to do things. Because every client that we work with has, they have different resources, they have different competitors, their differentiators are different, they have different challenges. It wouldn't make sense for me to come into an environment like that and say, oh, I don't want to even hear about how you do things. This is how you're going to do things. The work that we do is really, I think the term is called white glove, where it's
mm,
highly customized. We've built over 20 years of experience. So every project is different and it is based on the unique situation that the client is in.
mm. Great deal of humanity in your business as you've decided to lead it, huh?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Really, really important. It's like obviously it helps if you're making money, which is good. But humanity and purpose are more important. And I think there's a way to bring in the revenue that need to bring and still have these values and be true to those core things that impact you and
Mm-hmm.
impact the people that you work with as well.
Mm-hmm. What is, from your perspective, when you're talking about having purpose? We've talked about the humanity side a little bit, but I'm curious about the purpose side. What is so important about that for you as a leader?
Oh, that's a great question. When I started Outsmarts in 2002, we had the plan that we were just going to work with software firms. And it didn't last long. We were going to niche down, we were going to work with software firms. And I found that they weren't really respectful of the work that we do. I felt like it wasn't working for me. Sorry, can you repeat that question for me again? Because I
Absolutely. Of
lost
course.
where.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. What is it about purpose that has been so important to you?
Yes. So the software firms, the nation down, felt like it was the right thing to do because, that's the way businesses that we're told you need to segment. Um, it didn't feel right for me. It didn't
Mm,
feel like there was a purpose. Also, we kind of grew and we worked with all kinds of companies. And then I was beginning to feel jaded. It's like I call it I lost my mojo and I
mm,
was not enjoying what I was doing. And
mm,
I took time to consider like why are you feeling like this? And I think a lot of it was I didn't really just want to be impacting people's bottom line. Obviously, in marketing, you're bringing leads, you're bringing business. And yes, that's absolutely important, but it felt like we were working with some companies that just didn't have the same values as we did.
Mm,
So we set up some rules. We don't work with oil firms, we don't
mhm,
work with politicians. There's a few kind of organizations or industries that we don't work with because we feel like they don't have purpose. So
mm,
anytime that we're working with clients, I will often ask, even at the first meeting, how are you giving back to society? What is your purpose? To
ah,
find out if there's an alignment there. And sometimes it's because they're a family business. We've got one client that's really, really philanthropic. They have a huge impact on the North Shore. So for every client, their purpose is different things, and our purpose is different from our clients. But I don't want to work with people who are just out to exploit, follow the capitalistic approach of just making money for the sake of making money, and to hell with anybody who gets in their way.
mhm, mhm.
Clients that we want to work with.
Yeah. So for you and your team, how does purpose, your own purpose, and perhaps that of your clients, should you choose, should that be part of the question for you? How does that inspire you? What role does purpose have in your inspiration?
I'm choosing to interpret this question around how do the clients that I work with who have purpose, or the team that I work with, what is their purpose and how does that inspire me? We work with some great companies that do a lot of good in the world, B corporations, healthcare organizations that are focused on, delivering care to
Mhm,
people. That inspires me because just seeing how other industries work is fascinating, but also seeing organizations that are actually set up, their whole purpose is to change the world. And
mhm,
we've worked with quite a few of those types of organizations over there. That's fascinating. And you learn so much from them because they're very principled and they're like, yeah, no, we just don't do this. We don't even consider it. This is how we do things. So being transparent, being, having a focus on, impact, positive impact on people and the planet. A lot of the companies that we've worked with are those kinds of organizations that, as you pull back the covers and you learn more and more about them, it's fascinating to see the things that they do, and be inspired by those kinds of things, and learn from them, and then, start adopting and doing some of those things yourself.
yeah. What something that really popped for me, it's interesting. You talked about purposeful companies, just to feed back a little bit of language. You talked about purposeful companies being very principled,
Mm.
and very disciplined. You also spoke about transparency, which interestingly, I feel like that relays back to the high standards of quality and also the responsibility value.
That's right.
I'm curious about that. Where is that link? I'm specifically curious about responsibility because we haven't talked about that yet, but it feels like that's inside this somewhere.
Yeah, well, if you are going to if you're going to do good in the world, you have to be responsible. You have to be strong. You have to have values and stick to those values. So I think the relationship between responsibility is, well, it's an obvious one because if you're going to say these things, you should do these things. You're responsible for doing them. I think though that the challenge right now, is that a lot of companies jumped on this greenwashing bandwagon, and it
Mm,
certainly seems like they have purpose, but they often don't. It's just smoke and mirrors a wee bit to take away from some of the other things
mhm.
that they're doing that aren't very good for the planet or very principled, or whatever it might be. I'm not going to give any examples, obviously, but I see a lot of it over the last 5 years. Organizations who, yeah, are trying to influence in the wrong way.
How do you know, not to give specific examples, but how do you know when those values are misaligned? What kind of, when are you able to distinguish that difference?
I think it's the easy thing to distinguish quite early on. And well, part of the process that I go through is to have, a consultation or a discovery session with clients, where a lot of these questions come up.
Hmm.
Um, you know, what is how th things like, give me an example of a project that hasn't worked with you in the past, for you in the past. So the answer to that is always a really good giveaway, because if people start blaming other people, or if the project that went awry was, oh, this company tried to sue me, like that's a sign that there's something not quite right, and it's not
Hmm.
necessarily going to be a good fit. Um,
Mm.
and then also, I feel like, and maybe it's just because I've been doing this for a long time, but as soon as I get on a call with somebody where I'm like, "Ugh, that there's not an alignment here," it's really,
Hmm.
really easy to tell just by the way the
Hmm.
people
Just feel it.
the
Yeah.
conversation goes. It's almost like a gut thing. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
And I've been really, really fortunate. Our clients, all of our clients are unbelievably amazing right now. Very respectful, really, really great to work with. But over the years, we've had some of those clients that haven't been, and sometimes they don't realize it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're really high demand and really, really difficult, like a thorn in your side. And sometimes you have to let them go gently.
Hmm. Hmm. I love this. Um, there's a lot of things going on in my head right now. I'm excited. Okay, so I want to I want to just highlight in this conversation so far that we really started out with a story about your granny,
We did.
right? And just taking us back to that moment where one of the first things you said about her was that she was kind.
Mhm.
And from there, it kind of grew into more of those really human, the really human way of showing up with a great deal of empathy, kindness, warmth, generosity, all the beautiful things that you mentioned about her. Um, Happy, content, and no evidence of the struggle. So I just want to bring us back to there. And as we think about the conversation we've had so far, it's been so interesting that from my perspective as listening to you, I'm hearing that everything you've done in building Outsmarts has been to align yourselves for easy, enjoyable work that
Mhm.
is limiting the potential for struggle, if you will,
Yeah, yeah.
and really finding opportunities to grow and thrive
Ab-
together, right? Is that accurate?
It's very, very important. Yes, I think that's a good way of putting it.
Good. Okay. So the other thing that you said that I think is worth highlighting is when you were talking about your sales position, you talked about it feeling disingenuous that because you needed to do whatever it took to make quota.
Mhm.
And it really wasn't bringing, from my perspective as hearing you, it wasn't bringing that human component into the work. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Is that what I'm hearing?
it didn't feel human. It didn't feel respectful. It also felt exploitative and
Mm,
manipulative. And I don't think that's a great way to start a business relationship, quite honestly. And I think about that quite often because in your inbox, I'm sure is the same. It's full of spam. It's full of people saying, oh, I'm going to sell you this. I'm going to do this, that. And the next thing, that's not a great way to start a business relationship through spamming somebody in their inbox. What does that
yeah.
say about you? And that's a lot of sales tactics do things like that, and marketing as well. When I did my undergraduate degree in Edinburgh, I my undergrad was in commerce, and I had the chance to do marketing as part of my major or minor, whatever you call it. I'm not sure what you call it here, but I chose not to do marketing because I just did not want to be in any job that manipulated people.
Mm, interesting.
So, fast forward till now, that's the reason I do marketing the way I do it, is that, we're not about manipulating. We're not about, for example, in SEO, a lot of, there are a lot of iffy practices called black hat SEO. We don't do any of that. It's better to take the time to do things properly than to try to game the system. And I know
Mm.
there's lots and lots of successful people who game the system, and good for them. but not good for them because they probably don't sleep very well and they probably, you know, yeah, the universe is going to come back to bite them on the bum for that one.
Yeah, so it's, again, there's that good karma, good energy. I'm hearing a lot of integrity, self-respect, as well as respect for others,
Mm.
right? Really, really feeling that and experiencing that. And thank you for bringing your undergrad degree into the picture because I was really curious about someone who you didn't want to take marketing, you didn't want to do that, and yet here you find yourselves in online marketing essentially. So what happened that sort of brought you into this curious place of being one of Vancouver's first to adopt digital strategy?
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting one. What happened was I had a friend of mine who she was our first developer, our first designer for websites. And she pointed out to me something that I obviously didn't realize myself. She's like, this is the direction you should go in because you're really, really good at it. This was really, really early. Um,
Hmm.
Prior to founding the business, I sold sales, e-commerce solutions. So it was all to do with the internet. And I remember actually attending my first, and I've still got the guy's book here. His name was Tom Vassos. I attended my first presentation about digital marketing, 1995 it must have been. And I was fascinated by this. I've always been fascinated in how innovation changes things. And, the internet, e-commerce changed things, social media really changed things. These days, AI is really changing things. So, I think all of these things came together and it wasn't that I set out, I'm now a marketer. It was a gradual flow and change that made me realize that no, marketing isn't about manipulating people. There's an ethical and positive way to do it. So, yeah, when I started my business, I did more traditional sales and marketing. I would kind of parachute into companies and do, a campaign or a project or whatever it might be for them. And then as it came to the fore around digital, a few shortly years later, it just seemed like the obvious transition for me into I was an early blogger. I've written, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of blog posts. I don't write my blog posts anymore. I've got a team to do that, thankfully. I was an early podcaster. I think I mentioned this to you
You
too.
did.
Back in 2009, I had a podcast. We had 40 episodes. I gave it up because there weren't all of the tools that there are now to edit
Mm.
and make it easy. So yeah, it just kind of naturally segged into this is the direction that we're going to take. And it's kind of interesting that it's lasted for quite a long time. I don't
Yeah.
think I'm going to be doing anything too different at this point.
Well, it sounds like, you said you're fascinated by innovation.
Mm.
And certainly since 2002, since you've been in this industry, there's been a lot of innovation, particularly in the online space or the internet space, if you will.
Been a lot of changes. And, I look back on the changes. Being online, when I was in uni, my lecturer, managing change lecture, commented about, he had this comment about, one day not too long, this is me giving my age away, not too far away, all of the computers and all around the world are going to be connected. And my head's like, how can this possibly be? Like, there's going to be tubes everywhere, and that's going to be weird. So that started me off being excited, and then the internet came along, and it just had this huge and unbelievable impact. And then e-commerce, social media, I was really excited about. And I feel now that, as I see AI come into the fore, I hope we do a better job with AI than we did with social media because social media, there is a lot of good done with social media, but there's a lot of, you know, negative things, let's say, that have resulted through social media. So hopefully with the AI, things are going to be a wee bit different. But yeah, it's always really exciting. Change is exciting from a technology perspective because you really don't know. Like,
Mm.
Google didn't exist at one point, it was Netscape. Chat GPT exists for AI right now, but in 5 years, there's maybe going to be something completely different, and we're going to be doing things really, really differently. And I think AI, really has the potential to turn everything upside down. Who
Hmm.
knows what 5 years is going to bring?
What do you think? What do you see? Are you willing to share a little bit of what you envision?
Yeah, I don't think things are going to change as quickly as people expect them. A lot of people are worried that AI is going to put everybody out of work. And this is not the first time I've heard this because computers were going to put everybody out of work. The internet was there wasn't going to be, nobody would have jobs. There are always going to be jobs. It's just that jobs are going to change. So when I graduated, my job didn't exist. In 5 or 10 years, there will be jobs that exist that don't exist today. I think we will learn to understand the positive aspects of AI. But on the other hand, I also worry that there's going to be a time when it's just AI speaking AI, and what's the point? I'll give you an example. I've been testing out different AI platforms, and one of them is an AI add-on that you add to your inbox. And I had way too many emails in my inbox that I needed to sort out. So I added this to it, and it automatically sorts everything. It's awesome to a point, sorts everything, organizes it into different folders, but it also replied to your or drafted replies to your emails.
Mm.
Some of them were good. It would give you an option of what about this draft or what about this draft, and some of them were quite good. But what I found after a couple of weeks of trying this tool out was that because I wasn't writing it, I wasn't actually remembering what I had sent to people. So if we get to the point, and there's all kinds of AI automation tools out there, if we get to the point where, AI is managing my LinkedIn and it's managing my email, there's no humanity left. There's no connection. And
Mm.
like, why would we even be doing that if it's just AI speaking to AI in
Right.
this world of just technology? So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited in some ways. I'm nervous in some ways. I think we don't even understand the capability. And as it develops, our governments were slow to put rules in place and acknowledge the impact of social media. And there is potential for that. I can already see it happening. So I think our governments need to, and the lawmakers need to get familiar with what the potential of this technology is. I overheard somebody at a conference last week, and he was talking about, oh, in 5 years' time, there's going to be robots walking all among us. And I kind of laughed at that and thought, oh, that's kind of weird. I think he's been watching too much Star Wars. Maybe not in 5 years, but maybe in 10 years. And you know what? I would love a robot to come and clean my house.
Well, there are robots in restaurants now serving,
Yeah.
which we've seen in some places, even here in Vancouver, there were a couple of them. So yes, there may be robots who are helping us in our lives to make life easier. I'm curious about this piece of change.
Mhm.
Loving change, loving innovation, and really embracing change is what I'm hearing from you. And at the same time, standing very strong in values that ground you for how you're leading your business. As you know, with my work with differentiation, when I'm working with advisors and consultants, whatnot, to help them differentiate their offer and differentiate their business, very often there's a strong resistance to change.
Mhm.
Change is seen as a risk, or change is seen as something that will inhibit their ability to differentiate on a consistent basis going forward. What do you see around that when you're helping your clients in terms of their response to change and also how they differentiate? How do you see that in the work that you do?
That's an interesting one. Clients are often resistant to change because they see things from their perspective. Sometimes we come in, we can see things from a completely different perspective. We try to help them to see from the perspective of their clients. And sometimes you need to change because if you're too lost but in the woods and in the trees, you can't really understand what the benefits of your products are because or services because you're thinking about, the features.
Mm.
Sometimes there has to be a change, there has to be a mind shift with clients so that they, really begin to see things from a different perspective. Now, we're not brand experts per se. We've got a partner, Carly Cunningham, who we work with on, if a client comes to us and they are thinking about their digital strategy and their website and they aren't clear about their
Mm.
differentiators, we will have them work with someone else, maybe you, Michelle,
Thanks.
because it doesn't make any sense for us to come in and do what we do until they're clear about those kinds of things. But
Mm.
often it's clear to us that, yeah, there's no point in you spending money on the work that we do until you're clear on
Mm.
those differentiators. And yeah, that can be a wee bit painful for people because it does involve change. It's also interesting that, you talk about me embracing change. I feel like my husband would probably laugh at that because I've lived in my house for 25 years and we're talking about moving and now I'm like, oh, I don't want to change at all. So
Mm.
I think, I don't know if this is a word, but I'm a contrarian. So on the
Mm.
one hand, I love change.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I hate change. I like
Mhm.
just the way they are.
You know what? I've heard that before, actually. You're just touching on something really interesting. I've heard that people um, for lack of better language, for people whose outside lives are busy and full and have a lot of change, their inner lives can be very resistant to change because they need that balance and that stability. They can't have the ground moving in all areas of their life at all times. And that can go the other way as well. You know, if your inside life is very chaotic, you might want more stability and less change in your outside life. And that comes down right down to interesting. I read a study on it. It comes right down to what we choose to eat. So if our life is full of a lot of change, adventure, risk, etc., our chosen foods will often be more comfort foods, things we know. We don't adventure into new territory. But if we're looking for adventure in our lives outside, we may choose menu items
Mhm.
that are adventures. Isn't that interesting? So
That's really interesting. I'm going to notice that now as I go out into the world and think, oh, okay, what should I have at a restaurant? Maybe things are busy and in turmoil, so I'll have macaroni cheese.
I'm very similar. I'll tend to go with something simple, whereas others that I've been with will tend to be very adventuresome with their food. So I think it's really curious. I always think, huh, that's really interesting. And I think when we're running our business, and particularly when we're doing our marketing, or in my case, when we're doing differentiation, understanding our relationship with change and risk and what needs to be stable and what can have a bit more adventure in it is actually a really big part of our growth strategy and our value proposition too.
Yeah,
How does that resonate for you in your work with clients?
totally does. I'm a big fan in taking things in bite-sized chunks, organizing things, if we're working on a project. Often, we'll start with a pilot project. Maybe a client wants to engage us for a year, but we'll start with a pilot project to see if it works. Because it's a good thing to take things in bite-sized chunks. I find that if you try to look too much at the big picture, and too far off into the future, that it tends to overwhelm. Like it
Mm.
feels like there's too much that needs
Hmm.
to rebrand, you need to, all of these different
Hmm.
things that need to be done. That puts people off. Um,
Yeah.
and oftentimes, I know this is where we need to be, but, we'll start with a small thing and then we'll do it gradually over time. Um, as
Yeah.
it's a good approach because if you just turn things on their heads and it's too much turmoil, you can end up, it's like any challenge. If it's so too overwhelming, you can end up giving up. And the last thing we want is for our clients to give up. We
Right.
want to feel like we're holding their hand at each step along the process.
Absolutely. I always say small steps climb mountains. Just keep
That's
taking lots of small steps.
right.
Don't stop.
Want to get to the top, and you know that you're kind of out of breath, but just one step at a time, and we'll get there, and we're supporting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's certainly a technique that I use personally, but also with clients as well. You're right, because the big picture, if you want to get to the top of a very ambitious mountain,
Mm.
if you're standing at the bottom and you haven't even figured out what hiking boots you need, it can feel a little bit
The
overwhelming.
first thing is to think about what hiking boots do I need for this trip, and then the next thing after that just builds
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah, exactly. One piece at a time. That's beautiful. So contrarian.
Mm.
Curious about that. I just would love to hear a little bit more. You said, I'm a contrarian. What did that mean to you when you said that?
I can just see, I can be always be the devil's advocate. I can see both sides. I can flip flop between two sides of things. I contradict myself often, I think.
Nice. So, how does that help you in your work?
I think it's a great thing because, again, you can see things from different perspectives. You can see things from the client's perspective, you can see the big picture, you can see things from our client or our customers' perspectives. Um, I think it's maybe frustrating for the people around me from time to time too. But I think it's good for them too because oftentimes this is we're blinkered. This is the way we've always done things. This is the way we're going to continue to do things. But if you're a wee bit of a contrarian, you begin to think about other ways of doing things.
Mhm. Is that something that is present in your earlier years as well? The contrarian approach?
Yeah, my
That
mum used to call me Mary, quite contrary. Still does. Yeah.
And what do you think was fueling that? What is it about the contrarian that you value?
Oh, again, I think it comes back to change, and the ability to, be have. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a really, really good question. Um, Knowing that, yeah, I'm not sure the answer to that question at all.
Ah.
Yeah, I'm really
What's
not sure.
coming up for you as you're kind of playing with it?
I'm just feeling like, it's a wee bit like I, I've got a wee bit of the devil in me, I think. Now, not necessarily with clients. So, although sometimes with clients, if I feel like they need to be drawn out, there's that kind of mischief that makes me want to. It's not teasing people, but it's, helping them to see maybe other perspectives. Um, I've often felt like I don't want to be the same as everybody else. I'm quite happy to be different, and I am different. I'm quite unique. I'm also humble. I feel like there's been too much talk about me and
And your story. Well, it's
I'm
interesting.
contrarian as well because should a marketer be humble? It feels like those are kind of contrarian perspectives
So let's play with that for just a couple minutes. Tell me about that. How does a humble marketer bring value to her clients differently from others?
because it's built on reality. A humble marketer digs deeper, takes time to listen. Listening is huge in sales and marketing. You have to listen, you have to ask questions. I think a humble marketer realizes that and if you're going to do things a more ethical way, a less flashy way, let's say, if you're not going to exploit, you really have to get creative and do things slightly differently. So yeah, I think that being humble, or it's not maybe even humble isn't the right word, but as we're talking about me, I'm not really comfortable talking about me. So I'd rather talk about you or talk about my clients or, you know, I don't need accolades. I don't need
Mhm.
awards. I see a lot of competitors and, there's a lot of stuff that they put out there and there's absolutely not a lot of substance to some of it.
Mhm.
I'd
Mhm.
rather be real, be authentic, be humble, and be slightly contrarian too.
Well, you've mentioned the devil in you, and I'm going to frame that as mischief.
The devil's a bad word. I'm not
Yeah.
words
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. And part of, I really want to honor that and acknowledge you for the discomfort that you're feeling. And thank you for sharing with us. I recognize that that's not always a comfortable place. As you're leading your team, I would love for us to just take a moment for if your team is listening, and I'm sure they will be at some point, um, what might you like them to know as their leader?
I want them to know that I have their back. I want them to know that you can always come to me. I want them to look back when they're old and, maybe not working anymore and be like, oh, I worked for this person and she had a huge impact on me and my beliefs and my life. And I think about that with my team. I think about that with, I love to mentor younger women who are starting in the industry, maybe, just starting up their own consulting or agency, supporting those kinds of people and helping them, giving them the wisdom that of the things that I've learned over the years and maybe the confidence to know that
Mhm.
somebody has their back. That's what I think about when I think about my team. I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't need to have a giant statue. If several people or even one person is like, oh, remember Vary? I'll never forget that person. She taught me how to treat other people, how to be respectful, and how to do well in the world.
Hmm.
That would be awesome. For my kids, I think about that for them. I think about that for my team. And ultimately, really when I'm working with clients as well, I kind of feel like that too. So,
So thank you for that segue. I was going to ask you if you would like to share, I'd love to hear one client story that really stands out for you that makes your heart sing.
oh, there's so many. And yeah, there are so many that we're proud of. Um, and they kind of vary. Like there's a project that we're working on right now, or we have been working on for the last year or so, and it's a really really complex SEO project. Not many companies can do these really really complex SEO
Mm.
projects. One of the aspects of this project was, they had two huge legacy sites, thousands and thousands of pages. They wanted to retain as much of the SEO rank juice as they consolidated into one completely different website. So we were really proud of that because it was a lot of work, a lot of number crunching and data and research. And we were able to give them a strategy and help them to make as much as they possibly could from those sites. So there's those kinds of projects which are big and meaty and you can really get your teeth into. And then there's some projects where, it's impacting people directly. So we were involved a few years ago with the launch of the a care clinic, the urgent primary care clinic, or one of them in Vancouver. That was a rewarding project. We work with clients who provide care services. Those are always
Mm.
rewarding projects. They're all fun. They're all rewarding. We even had a project quite a long time ago where, and a woman that we worked with. This was, I feel like, and 15 years ago, she had launched a charity where it was water rollers that people in Africa use to go to the well. It was a volunteer. From
Mm.
time to time, we take on volunteer work like this where we can, there's a big impact. And that was a really fun one because, the money that we were helping to raise helped people in Africa to buy these water rollers that impact, typically it's women in those
Mm-hmm.
situations who have to go to the well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're walking all day or more than that.
Mm-hmm.
That was an amazing project. So, but there's lots of them like that. Like that's just a couple of them that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. But a lot of the projects have been really rewarding, and sometimes it's rewarding because you have a great relationship with the client, or sometimes it's rewarding because you learn something new, or you came upon a challenge that you hadn't come up against before. Very, very fortunate in the clients that I work with that they're all brilliant. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my husband, my family, my clients, my team. But yeah, the clients are always inspiring, and I'm always learning from people as well. I feel like the day I stop learning, I might as well just stop. Oh, actually, the day I stop making mistakes is the day I should just stop, because you need to keep making mistakes if you're just going to get better. If you're not making mistakes, it
Yeah.
means you're not trying hard enough. Sorry, that was a lot. I kind of segged into mistakes and all kinds of different things there, but
That was beautiful. I loved seeing your energy. You lit up like a firecracker as you were thinking about all the wonderful stories and the impact that you've had through your business over the years with your team and for your clients as well. It's remarkable. Vari, in our last couple of minutes, I know mentorship and leading others is a really important piece for you. If you were wanting to speak to someone just getting started in their career now who really values marketing like you do, that's not manipulative, but rather genuine and humble and
mhm.
impact and purpose driven, what might you want to share? What piece of wisdom might you want to share with that
Well,
person?
it kind of touches on what I was just mentioning. You will make mistakes in life.
Mm,
It's really important to not punish yourself over the mistakes that you make, and to look at mistakes in a positive way, because that's how we learn, that's how we get better. There are going to be challenges, especially in the first few years of business. It's really, really challenging. There's going to be lots of times where you're going to want to give up. Don't give up, because it's worth it. And it's important to do things on your terms as much as possible as well. Take the time to put things into perspective. Take bite-sized chunks as you're growing your business. You don't have to be everything all at once. And if you are everything all at once, it's going to make it less strong. Your
mm,
business is not going to be as strong if you know take the fast track, take the time to do it properly, learn from your mistakes, and lean on people. I think the biggest mistake that I kind of made in my business was, for a long time I wanted to do everything myself.
mm.
So learn to delegate, understand that there are if there are people who are going to do things better than you. Get over yourself. Get over yourself. Yes, it's
Mm.
important to understand different aspects of your business and how things work, but you shouldn't try to take it on yourself. You should recognize that other people are going to be better at it, and you're going to grow your business faster through delegating and trusting other people to do those things.
Gorgeous. And to your point, you'll empower them and make their lives better as well. So it's gorgeous. Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So for those who would like to follow you, get in touch with you, where might they be able to discover and get in touch with Vari?
Sure. The best place to go is our website, which is out-smarts.com. We have a fantastic blog on our website. We recently got a notification that we were one of the top Canadian marketing blogs, which was kind of cool.
Very nice. Congrats.
It's out-smarts.com/blog. If you can spell my name, I would love for you to connect on LinkedIn as well. My name is spelled with an M, but it's pronounced with a V. So Mhairi Petrovic. There's only one of me, so I'm quite easy to find on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. And anything else you'd like to share with us before we finish up today?
This has been beautiful. I've really, really enjoyed it. We actually have a wee thing that we're doing right now where if you would like us to do a free SEO audit for clients, for you. If you're interested in learning more about your SEO, we'll run a wee audit for your website. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, reach out to me about that, and we will run that for anybody who's listened to this amazing podcast. Hopefully, you've learned a lot about me and my business. Most importantly, I hope this has maybe given the people who are listening some ideas about, how success can look, and how purpose can look, and how to, build a business based on, strong values and strong
Mm,
positive ethics.
wonderful. That is a great finish. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a delight, as I knew it would be, Vari.
It has been awesome. I've really enjoyed it too. Thanks for the chance.
Great.
And yeah, hopefully we can do this again. I'd love to.
I think we will. That sounds great. We'll see you again soon. And bye for now.